Please support this channel by subscribing and leaving comments. Stay well, stay safe.
Well, that's a great question. I tend to agree with Mr. Green and Mr. Francis. I don't think video or film will ever be conclusive evidence because they're too close to us physiologically, and it could always be someone in a suit. I mean, look at Harry Lund, so great, apart from the goofy mannerisms of the face. You know, I mean, it could be fake. I think there is one way, actually, to prove it video-wise, but the situation would be so rare, and it's this. If you had a stationary camera, and you were lucky enough, first of all, to encounter one, and to get it to run in front of you, like, the one scenario would be this. You're over there, it's over to the left, you're here, you've got your camera set, it comes into some field, again, this is a low probability. You fired a shot off, and hoping to God it doesn't come at you at that point, and it ran across your field, and if they're as fast as they're supposed to be, up to 35, 40 miles an hour, you could, I think you could prove that it wasn't a guy in a suit, because it's either a guy in a suit or it's a Sasquatch. We know that human beings can only run 25 miles an hour top, maybe 26. And if they went across, you could prove that the tape wasn't manipulated, and you wouldn't be left with many other options.
But how would you measure the tape? It's magnetic.
Well, I mean, it would. Well, you have if the image remained still, you could have from point A to point B, and by simply timing it from point A to point B, you would be, look at Renee. Renee's, yeah, full of it, you youngster, you. What was that? No, Renee, go ahead.
This stuff was done 20 years ago and didn't prove a goddamn thing at the practice and film side. These two jokers don't know anything about it. It was done long ago.
Yeah, but it wasn't running.
Triangulation measurements and everything else,
Yeah.
what does it prove?
No, but I don't think everyone was running.
Well, it has to do with walking. The faster walker can only walk so fast. It doesn't matter if walk or flies. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
So that the walk was already demonstrated. But
Did I wake you from a nap back there, Renee?
no, I'm
Okay.
just listening on. Anybody who says a video camera is the thing to use obviously doesn't know what that is.
Oh, I know, but I said it would be very, very difficult, but I think...
That would be a video camera is the worst thing you can use.
By the way, I would still, as far as any kind of photographic evidence, I would think the way Patterson did it is still the best way. A 16 millimeter wind-up, because you can enhance film. If you blow video up, it's just the pixels get bigger.
Right.
You don't get any more detail.
well, that's what I was getting at. You can't take
Yeah, make sure you know what speed it's running at, and make sure when the horse knocks you off, you know, it doesn't change the speed. Anything else? Yeah.
Well, it occurred to me that if somebody were to get video footage of one of these things jumping over a 6-foot-high fence like they've been required to do, that might be better than even high-speed running. And also, has anyone tried a computer enhancement of comparison film?
That's a good thing. I would, I don't know how that would come about. Actually, what the gentleman did, when you saw it leap up, where was your camera? It was on the floor.
I was in such a state of confusion. I couldn't even think of picking it up and taking a photograph.
Yeah.
And on the camera. And I'm a person that, frankly, doesn't do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
The all effect had on me was I was just about paralyzed.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And that doesn't normally happen. I mean, I'm bitten by animals every day. I had a stomach, and we used to call them alligators. Because as soon as you put your hand in it, it'll grab you.
Right.
With his teeth, it'll grab your balls and things like that. And the only safe way is to get hold of his head.
Right.
And he has discovered recently that if he keeps it forward, he can get you behind the elbow. So that's
Yeah.
me out now. But I was paralyzed. I didn't feel I could do anything.
Yeah. Well, and again, getting back to what Daryl, I mean, my hat is up to, well, I just, my hat is still off there. I mean, he was, I mean, you could just, Hale was just running, I mean, and but we had talked about it before going up about, you know, what to do if something would happen, just to remain loose, don't be fearful, you know, just kind of keep a good attitude. If something, but again, we didn't even think that that was even a probability of coming close to it. I mean, again, we're just looking for footprints. But, I think it's taken us way too much time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, this time I'd like to introduce Daniel Perez. He's with the Center of Bigfoot Studies out of Los Angeles.
Are you unpacking your lunch there, then?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Dan Perez from the Center for Bigfoot Studies. 30 years old. I live in Los Angeles. I make my living as a union licensed electrician. I've been doing this work for a while. So it doesn't seem like I have, you know, being 30, it doesn't look like I've done it for a whole long time, but unfortunately I have. My presentation, like always, I don't want to cover just one area. I'm going to jump around like I always do and talk about everything under the sun Sasquatch-wise. Okay? First of all, I want to cover the first, I'm not going to give you the Canadian version of my talk. The Canadian version would be, I would use Sasquatch all the time, and I would say, oh, and about, and A. I noticed that about the Canadians, and they use those all the time. But in 1972, it may have been 1973, I was about 10 years old. I saw a movie, The Legend of Boggy Creek, and that's how I initially got interested. I'm skeptical by nature. When I first saw this film, I thought, this could not be happening today. I was almost school-taught that, quote-unquote, monsters are not a possibility. So I want to talk, okay, that's basically how I got started, big deal. So, this publication here, which was due out in October of '92, is called Bigfoot at Bluff Creek. It's the 25th anniversary commemorating the film, okay? In this publication, one of the things that has fascinated me throughout the whole, my involvement in the Sasquatch business is not so much the observations, not so much what is being recorded, but the way people think. And so in this publication I start off with, everyone has seen it's been so long. In 1968, the first Planet of the Apes movie was shown. That was shown at the theaters or wherever. Okay? So in that movie, they captured the guy, Taylor, I guess maybe it was Burt Lancaster. Charlton, there you go, a movie guy there. And the apes captured him and they said, how did you get here? And he said, I flew. And the apes, in this case, I don't mean to be critical against people with PhDs or scientists in general, but this was the high echelon, the ruling party, so to speak. One of the apes said, flight is an impossibility. And Taylor said, lucky for him in the movie, there was paper on the table. So he made a paper airplane. And he showed, like so. He took the paper airplane and he flew it. And everybody in this building, they saw that. They witnessed it. but they did not believe it because they were conditioned that flight was an impossibility. So in the movie, we're talking again about thinking, how people think. One of the apes walks over to the paper airplane. You'll have an opportunity to see the movie whenever. And he crumbles it. What you just saw did happen. In 1967, a man named Roger Patterson, with his partner and friend Bob Gimlin, came out of the thickly wooded Bluff Creek area to the most controversial film of a Bigfoot. That film got the same type of treatment at that time. We had such disbelieving minds that we refused to give this film any possibility that it might be real. In 1952, it was 1952, a scholar by the name of Richard Bernheimer, it says in this book, I don't know his biography, is that the word? That he's from, he's a presidency. It says something about Harvard University. So I assume that maybe he's from one of those Ivy League schools. This book is titled Wild Men of the Middle Ages. All of us are very well familiar with the mythology, or we've all heard of the wild men legends, and this has been recorded throughout the history of man. And in the Middle Ages is about the 1500s. Here is a scholar. I have a copy of this book. This is John Green's copy. I'm just borrowing it. This is what he says, paragraph 1. It may well be to assure the reader from the start that the wild men are imaginary creatures and that their name is a technical term. The wild men are imaginary creatures. So there's a line of thinking that these wild men, that these people who had reports, or the wild men mythology that came from Europe in the 1500s, 1600s, and 1400s, that all of this was imaginary. And everything that's being seen here in North America is BS. People aren't seeing Sasquatches, at least according to this school of thought.
Name of the author again, please.
Richard Bernheimer. Now, like I said, I just juggle all around. The discovery of a Sasquatch, and I'll make this perfectly clear so there's no misunderstanding. I have done this, studied, and been involved enough that I will go on public record. I am 100% satisfied that Sasquatches or Bigfoot are a real, living, physical animal, part of this planet. I come to a point where I'm totally satisfied. So, in terms of the magnitude of the discovery, I lived in Los Angeles, and I went through that earthquake. What was it? Maybe a 5 on the Richter scale. The discovery of the Sasquatch would be like about an 11.7 joule. The magnitude, the implications would just be so far reaching, it would just be, like Renee says, it would be mind-boggling. Some of you, it's a wait and see. Let's find the Sasquatch and let's see what kind of jolt it really has. A couple of years ago, they found this Iceman out in the French Alps or wherever. This is a man 5,000 years ago or whatever. God created a sensation. It was on the cover of Time magazine, and it was found apparently at the border between two countries. And they fought over this thing. Hey, no, this is on our turf. We want it. And some other people said, no, this is on our turf. So let me tell you, in terms of maybe they're saying, say someone guns one down at the Canadian-U.S. border. Well, the Canadians are going to come in and say, this is ours. And the people from the United States are going to come in and say, no, 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 this is ours. I don't know. I heard what Dr. Grover Krantz said, and I don't know if I really want to comment, but I think my own personal opinion is that the discovery of a Sasquatch, once they can verify that, hey, this is real, that, so Joe Blow really did get one, it would be, oh, goodness, I couldn't imagine. I mean, if you thought this Nancy Kerrigan, Tanya Harding scandal was big time, this would make it look like the small league. And another thing, too, last night, and I was going to bring this up anyway, one of the things, I had an opportunity to listen to a tape of a man by the name of Glenn Thomas, who said he saw one of these things near Estacada, Oregon in 1967. And I quote from the tape, and this is one of the things I'm saying, well, maybe this is why, and this is my own opinion, I'm thinking maybe this is why Sasquatches today in 1994 are probably the same Sasquatches in terms of intellectual capacity or development of their society, the same Sasquatches that we have in 1894 or even 100 years before that. Glenn Thomas said it didn't seem to use the thumb. So I'm wondering, again, this is my talk. I'm allowed to give you my opinion, my speculation. I like to kick things around. So possibly we have a Sasquatch or Sasquatches that do not have the ability to have this type of movement. This thing right here, and maybe you could ask questions later, having an opposable thumb allows you to have two things, a power grip and a precision grip. You can smoke, you can write, you can pull yourself up. So possibly, and if the Sasquatches don't have this ability, you don't go anywhere. You can't manipulate your environment. So possibly this is a big key difference between us and them. This is why we have built, we have created, possibly because of this physical handicap, if it's true. Possibly this is why these things are, from an evolutionary standpoint, stagnant. The Chinese. I had an opportunity to go on a radio talk show. They called me up, wanted to know if I would talk, and I said, okay. They asked me, or maybe I made the comment, I said, well, stuff coming from China, I think is a bunch of crap. Stuff coming from the Soviet Union, I just don't take too much stock in. And there's a group here in the audience that is well acquainted with Sasquatch, the business of Sasquatch in general. They know who's who, so to speak. The Chinese have a journal, I assume it's a journal, I don't read Chinese, magazine, call it what you will, a booklet. And this is some of the stuff that's being published in China. This is the cover of one of their journals. It's from their Gay Ren Chinese Research Society or whatever. Now, if you look closely, you probably can't see it on this Xerox. This is a frame from the Ivan Marks footage. So I guess our friend, the late Dr. Warren Cook, sufficiently impressed these people, I guess the people who were doing the studies of the Gay Ren, their equivalent of Bigfoot there, that all of these guys bought this stuff hook, line, and sinker. This stuff is garbage. I think every one of Ivan Marks' alleged Bigfoot footage is a fake. But all of this stuff, so this is one of the problems in the research, is that not everyone knows what's what. Recently in Maryland, they have a publication called Strange Magazine. Mark Travinsky is the editor of that publication. On the cover of their trashy magazine, they had Ray Wallace's photos. Now, those people, again, who are acquainted with Ray Wallace is a faker. These photos are a fake. And it's just like, they wonder why we on the West Coast have written Ray Wallace off. And this was a long time ago. But the people, I guess, on the East Coast just don't get the news. Who will be first? In the first men up to Mount Everest, I guess it was May of 1951, Hillary and Norgay, Edmund Hillary, Tenzing Norgay has passed on. The first man to run a sub-4-minute mile, Roger Bannister. It's a very easy name to remember, sort of. The first man to land on the moon, the first man to set his foot on the moon, Neil Armstrong, 1969. So I'm not saying that go out and shoot a Sasquatch will be forever remembered, but I think that the first person to get one, that name, whoever it may be, will always have that type of prestige, regardless of whether they become infamous or famous or rich, whatever the case may be. But I think it would probably be an extremely prestigious way to go down in history. You know, you're right alongside the Hillarys, the Norgays, the Bannisters, the Armstrongs. So it would be a very big thing. How about, let's talk about thinking again. I don't often give talks. I gave a talk in Big Bear last year for a friend named Patty Tarbett for her group. And I pointed out, and I said, one of the things that I'm bothered by is think about this. I know a lot of people watch a lot of television. They don't necessarily read a whole lot or think a whole lot. People come up to me and they said, Mr. Perez, Bigfoot is BS. It doesn't exist. And then I come back and I said, well, I'm going to shoot one. And they say, no, don't do that. You see what's wrong there? If they don't exist, who cares if I have a gun? It doesn't matter, I'll never get one. But these people, these know-nothings, they tell me this all the time. And I get sick and tired of listening to this crap. Another thing, too, forget that. My next point. Scientific American, in April of 1957, published an article by the author was Andre Classe, C-L-A-S-S-E. I don't know his background, but the article was titled The Whistled Language of La Gomera. This, to me, is one of the most important pieces I've ever seen just in terms of literature as it relates to this field. This author explains in this article how a group of people like me and you live on this island. It's called La Gomera. I don't know where it is, but it exists. The island is physically characterized by high alpine mountains, up and down, up and down. And he went there, the author, to do some investigations. How they communicate, these people like me and you. They whistle. And the pitch of their whistle is so different at times, the people who are on the receiving end take it like, that's a yes, that's a no, that's a come here. Whistling. Now, there are reports, the early 1900s, literature scattered throughout North America of these things being referred to as the whistling men of the woods. What do we have here in the Pacific Northwest? Rugged, high, alpine mountains. In 1986, I had an opportunity to speak to an alleged witness. And he told me, I heard a whistle shriek from this mountain over here, and one responded from over here. And then they kept on going back and forth. So my question, or I throw this stuff out so people can think, is that might the Sasquatch be communicating through this whistling? And all the while we really thought not too much of it. Might this be how they're getting together and perpetuating their family? By whistling? Because people like me and you whistle on this island to communicate. It's a very effective means of communication in the high, rugged alpine mountains. In terms of discovery, there was a mountaineering book. I don't know if you read much about. John Hunt wrote a book, The Conquest of Everest. I had an opportunity to read it. The present Sasquatch movement, so to speak, has been from 1958 to the present time. During that time, we've had an opportunity to accumulate information. Green, DeHinden, Sanderson, Grover Krantz, and a bunch of other people have been like these big repositories of information. So we've accumulated knowledge. John Hunt, in his book, The Conquest of Everest, he says that successful assault with Hillary and Norgay, I guess he was part of the deputy in charge or whatever. He says that successful assault on Everest was built on the shoulders of every previous expedition. That every other expedition yielded a new clue that you get up to a certain elevation and your lungs start to go, or you start to freeze. So they brought that information back and they said, we need better gloves, we need better boots. And so now, in terms of the Sasquatch discovery, people are starting to figure out, okay, this works, this doesn't work. And we're slowly but surely moving in the direction, inevitably, of a discovery. So maybe that discovery will come tomorrow. Maybe that discovery will come in the 2000, 2050, or the year 3000. We don't know. Maybe if the Sasquatch does not exist, we'll never have a discovery. One of the things, too, people talk about is in terms of things that exist, things that do not exist. Does everyone have a portable radio or a radio? We all have radios. Okay, these radios are operated, they get their information, you just plug it into the wall, right? That's the juice, the power thing. But they get their information from radio waves. And you go, where are those radios? Has anyone ever seen radio waves? No. But we see the byproduct, the music. Radio waves are a very real thing, folks. See, I'm trying to get something through your mind that said, I've never seen it. It doesn't exist. Radio waves exist. So I'm saying, just because you haven't seen a Sasquatch, does that mean they don't exist? We also, for your information, we know for a fact that a fossilized giant ape lived in India and China from a fossil record, and we call it Gigantopithecus. Another thing that I think it both amuses me and bothers me. In 1987, the movie Harry and the Hendersons came out. And so, I forget the scenario of the movie, but the guy goes, you remember the movie, the guy goes to the library, and he needs to check out some books on Bigfoot. And the lady has her glasses, and she brings them down, and she goes, downstairs, fantasy and folklore. So you see, right now, or that is where the Sasquatch movement is. It's the fantasy and folklore. And for some of you people, if you continue to peddle your crap, that's the way we're going to be perceived. You understand that? In 1989, we had another meeting similar to this in Pullman, Washington. And a character, I won't mention his name, but he got thrown in jail, which was really a great thing in itself. But that public perception is like, you guys are a bunch of kooks. And I'm going to talk a little more about that in a bit. Another thing is just like, oh, so-and-so saw a Sasquatch. He's so prestigious, straight A's, PhD, this and that. And so what? You guys, I don't follow the UFO field, but I read enough to kind of know just enough to get by. In August of 1965 in Santa Ana, California, a man by the name of Rex Heflin, he's a former cop, and at the time he was working for the California Highway Road Inspection. And off to the side of his window, he saw a UFO. And he took, I think, if my memory serves me correct, 3 Polaroid pictures. And this guy, here he is, a former cop and a California Highway Road Inspector, someone that we could probably take stock in. We can trust this individual, okay? So, roundabout came the idea of the computer enhancement of the photos, and they took those photos, and there certainly appeared to be string. These objects certainly appeared to be closer than what he claimed. He said 30 feet. And it turned out they were 3 feet away. And then the bottom line of this little thing is he admitted that it was a hoax. They realized these guys are on to me. I better fess up. And then let's just talk about this in general. The highest man in the United States, former President Nixon. He said, remember this? I'm not a crook. This guy was lying. Flat out. President of the United States, well, not that they all don't, but it's just like, here he's saying one thing, but the truth is something altogether different. See that? So when people say, well, this guy is so-and-so and so-and-so, you know, that I'm not so impressed anymore. Maybe when I was younger I said, wow. But now it's just like, yeah, sure. And I go out sometimes, I said, well, Mrs. So-and-so, can you take me out to the site? And I get out there and she proceeds to tell me her tale. And I come out with my tape recorder and my camera on a Saturday morning when I should be in bed. You know, and it's just like, I go, oh, this is being happened. Just shut the tape recorder off and stop taking pictures. And I just say, this has been very enlightening. One of the things here, we have newspaper clippings that go back before 1900. References to wild men in the woods. And basically, I think they're talking about Sasquatch. So we have a written record that goes back very far. Long before they said, well, there's commercial value in this. Let's just perpetuate the mythology of Sasquatch. My own thinking is that this Sasquatch equation it might be just a case of go out and they happen to be in the right spot, nail it. But maybe this thing has more X's and Y's and Z's in the equation. I don't know. But it seems to me that maybe the hunt should have been successfully concluded way back with the Pacific Northwest expedition or things like that. When things were hot and heavy in '67. Wow, someone's got it. It hasn't happened. Not that it isn't going to happen, but to the present time, it hasn't happened. So that's something that we should always be very aware of. One of the things here that these two gentlemen brought up, spotted owl has shut down the timber industry in certain, to an extent. Maybe that's just a statement. Okay, if a stupid, well, I don't mean to say stupid, but if a stupid bird is going to shut down the timber industry, imagine what a Sasquatch would do. So you guys just see, this is entertainment, this is the way to get out of the house, we'll go listen to a couple of speakers. You don't see the big picture. I mean, the discovery, I mean, can you imagine every Tom, Dick, and Harry, every scientist in North America just want to sink their fingers into this thing? There's a guy, I'm not going to mention his name, from Hood River, and he's a con artist. And he's one of the big-time, big game hunters or whatever, Bigfoot investigator, Mr. Expert. But he realized the Patterson-Gimlin film, this is like the Rock of Gibraltar. You know, this thing is solid, an unshakable case. So he saw that some of his photos in his book, 16-inch track, so he says, he said, well, I'm just going to scale this track down to 14.5, so it'll match the Patterson-Gimlin film, and this way, this con guy can be associated with a classic case, the biggest and the best. So you have to watch out for that stuff. Another thing too, it's just like, they've often accused us, the Sasquatch fraternity, as behaving like a bunch of baboons. And let me tell you, this behavior, this stuff goes on, not just in this field, every other field. In 1981, they had, I don't know if you remember the show, Walter Cronkite's Universe. His guests were Donald Johanson and Richard Leakey, the son of the famous Dr. Louis Leakey. And this is, that Walter Cronkite's Universe dissolved their friendship in less than a minute. I don't think those two have spoken. Donald Johanson is a world-famous anthropologist, and so is Richard Leakey. Donald Johanson was drawing a sketch. This is the lineage, the evolution of man, or whatever. There's one line. There's another line. This is national television. Richard Leakey saw that, and he drew a big X through it. And he put a question mark. And it's just, maybe that was no class. But this here is what dissolved that relationship. And then also, it's just like, here, I don't mean to get into his personal life. Donald Johanson is 50 years old. The guy's been married 3 times. And you start to scratch your head, you know, it's just like, what's going on here? A couple of things.
I missed your point in that. How did that relate to the...
Maybe that's, maybe the esoteric end of it. It's just, oftentimes, you know, if a guy is married 15 times, you start, hey, you know, is this guy, you start to wonder in terms of everything. I have a film here I'm going to show you. I'll make that the tail end. Then I'll entertain any questions. But before I show the film, I'm going to close up with a few items. In the year 2000, I plan to have, in 1988 I published a bibliography on this subject. The year 2000, I plan on producing a book where you can read pictures and all that stuff. One of the things too, it's just like why I'm involved. I get a kick out of this. It gets me out in places like hiking and getting out to meet people, and I've had a lot of fun with it. I've been doing it. Rick Knoll, sitting back there, remembers me when I was a teenager, about 14 years old. I was pretty enthusiastic. I'm 30 now. I'm still very enthusiastic. Let me close with this, and then I'll show the movie. And also, too, before I do that, that movie footage was made in May of 1963 in Hyde Park, California. So, if we had the footage by itself, I said that's pretty good. This casting, this is an original casting. It's about 16 and 5/8 inches long. Bob Tickness made this cast in Hyde Park, California, about May or probably late April of 1963. So the movie is an actual movie film. The guy who made it, his name was Charlie McCoy. he allowed me to make a duplicate of his film. His film was later destroyed, his original, in a cabin. So I looked back and I said, that was wise to have made a duplicate of that film. And this...
If you're enjoying all this rare and unique content, please show your support by subscribing and leaving comments. Stay safe, stay well.